Hello viewers, you are watching the Policy Times, and as you know, India, when at a time India is rising as a global power, it's very important for the Indians and citizens of this global world to understand what kind of foreign policy change is happening across the world, and how should India read or Indians read the international development globally. So as part of our global, understand the foreign policy and global issues, we have reached out to the embassy of Argentina here in New Delhi, and we have with us the ambassador of Argentina. And today we will talk about Latin America is a very important region for the country, and Argentina is one of the most important country in Latin America or South America, we can say in total. Now, Argentina is a middle income country and middle income emerging country. It has been witnessing a decent growth, though it was having a little trouble with regards to managing its inflation, but the economy is managing well. It's a $478 approximately billion economy, which ranks 38th in the global ranking, and in the purchasing power parity it is around $920 billion. Now if you see in the purchasing power, it ranks within top 50 economies of the world. It has the high human development index ranking, and it is also very decent in the GDP per capita. It approximately more than 10,000 US dollar, which is very decent given the world economy and society. Excellency, thank you so much for giving your bites and interview for Policy Times. Excellency, the first question, as we see in the background, that Argentina and India are celebrating 70 years of diplomatic relationship. How do you think, please take us through the historical relation between India and Argentina.
Okay, thank you. First of all, let me thank you for the opportunity to addressing your viewers about a relationship that it's very important for us, and that we are very willing to take it to the upper levels. So having the opportunity of discussing this with you, it's a great chance.
Thank you, Excellency.
Let me tell you that this year it's the 70th anniversary of the formal diplomatic relations between India and Argentina. What doesn't mean that we have not have relations before.
Right.
In fact, since the 20s, we have had very good relations, and a proof of that is the relationship between Tagore, one of the main writers of last century, and Mrs. Ocampo in Argentina. Even Tagore spent a long time. Then both of them kept on developing this relationship, that it was even more than a personal relationship, but that brought together or brought closer the countries at that time.
Right.
When even before the independence of India, there was an office, a trade office of India in Argentina. So relationships are dated much longer than the 70 years. This is a formal number that you have to take and put it somewhere. Well, we decided to put it in the year and in which we established diplomatic relations. The relationship between India and Argentina has been very tight during these years, particularly in the political field. You said we are both medium-income countries, emerging economies.
Right.
We have been working together for many years in different international fora,
right,
like the UN, like the NAM movement, like the G77, like a lot of them that represented at a point in time the place where we were in the international arena, right, in which we were non-aligned, and we were developing countries. So we were working a lot in those two institutional arrangements. The G77 on one side, G77 that's called Plus China, and
Right.
the non-aligned movement in which we both participated during a long time. And nowadays, the situation is that institutionally we keep on working on those forums and some other fora also.
Right.
Like now, things have changed a little bit, and we work together in the G20. But we keep on working in, for example, the G77 as developing countries that we are, and basically in issues like South-South cooperation, in which
Right.
both countries have a very important role. India, because of its size, because of they have been always working on that. Us, because at the time the program of Buenos Aires of South-South cooperation was created, it was in Buenos Aires 40 years ago. So for us, it's something that has been in our blood for all these years, and we are very proud of what we've done in that area. So we have been doing a lot of things in the political arena with India, but I believe that if you go to the commercial side of the relationship, it is not up to what both our people deserve.
Right.
I think that there is a lot of potential in the relationship. We're trying to explore that potential. We're trying to take the word potential out of our vocabulary and make it a reality that we can go much higher than what we are doing in our relationship. So this is basically the aim that we have. We have had very different visits of presidents of Argentina and India, same way with prime ministers in Buenos Aires. So
In the G20, I think. In the G20.
well, in the G20 was last year,
yeah.
but even this year we had the visit of our president.
Yeah.
Even in '84 we have the visit of President Alfonsín. Previous to that we have some other
There
visits.
has been actually many head of state visits and top-level, high-level visits
Yes,
in the two countries.
even Mrs. Indira Gandhi went to Argentina. So what I try to say is that in these 70 years of formal relations, there has been a lot going on politically between the two countries. And this is what I would like to rescue from our relationship.
Excellent.
The point now that we have to concentrate is to bring this economic relationship to a point in which we can honor the relevance of these two countries. 7th and 8th country in size in the world.
Right. Absolutely. Excellency, thank you so much for taking us to the historical journey. Now, recently, as you also mentioned in the answer, that the President of Argentina recently visited India. And also there has been, since 2015, our Prime Minister Modi and President met a couple of times. What are the key development areas now? What are the specific? We saw that MOU between Argentina and India have been signed in 10 different sectors. 10 MOUs have been signed. What are the key areas now we are focusing from here?
Well, let me tell you one thing. Since 2015, President Macri and Prime Minister Modi have met 5 times in different occasions. And what we can learn from those meetings is that there is a very good personal relationship between them, despite the importance of the political relationship between India and Argentina. So this is a chemic in which we need to work on.
Right.
And after the visits of Prime Minister Modi to Argentina, President came, as you said, we signed a lot of agreements, basically dealing with some areas that we find very important in our relationship. The first time we signed with India an MOU about defense. Not only we signed an MOU about defense, but 15 days or 1 month after the visit, the first delegation from India went to Argentina to just see in the field what is possible to do in terms of the cooperation that it's implied in the MOU that we signed.
Right.
So that's one area. The other area around which we have been working a lot is the area of agriculture. Why? Because, as you may know, Argentina is a main producer of agricultural goods, and we stand pretty high in standards of production, of technology in the field of, as we were mentioning, agriculture. So one of the main issues that we want to work on, and even when the president came 2 days previous to his visit, we had a very interesting seminar on technical cooperation between India and Argentina.
Excellent.
Because we thought that that is an area in which we can help a lot, and on the other side, in which we can be partners on the aims of the government of India. One of the main objectives that you have as a government is food security. So what we want to do is to participate as partners in the process of India granting food security.
Right.
And in that regard, we think that we have a lot of technology that we can transfer, mainly in two areas. In the areas of productivity and in the area of post-crop management. Those are two areas that can help a lot in India attaining a much higher
Food
production.
processing, maybe is one of the areas.
Food processing is a consequence. For processing the food, first you have to have it.
Yeah.
So for that process, we are very much interested on working with India in the basis.
Right.
And that means the productivity of the areas that you have, and that means also the management of the crops, in which India has been losing a lot during the last years. So that's an area in which we have been working. As a consequence of that area, of course, it's food processing. As a consequence of that area is all that is being done between the phytosanitary measures that are needed for opening the markets of the two countries. So from that concept of food security and partnership in the obtaining of that food security, there are a lot of ingredients that are coming to that table. So that's one important area. The second important area that we want to develop with India is the question of energy. In this regard, we have, as you may know, a very important source of shale gas.
Right.
We are the second world reserve of shale gas. So there is something that might help the Indian market. And for the first time in many years, we've been also exporting high quality oil since
India
last...
is one of the beneficiaries.
Well, we have been exporting. Since last week, we can say that we have gone back to the market as exporters of oil.
Excellent.
Very much linked to this is the question of new and renewable energies, in which we are very much willing to work with India in the question of solar energy, which is of such an importance for this country. And also here you have the concept of energy security. So that comes also for us as the possibility of being partners, or being interpreted by India as partners in this process of securing this energy sovereignty also. Linked to this, let me add, it's a very small one, it's the question of mining. And in mining, we have a very good reserve of lithium. So we cannot talk about solar energy if we don't talk about lithium. And in this sense, there has been also a very important mission of India to see the possibilities of buying in Argentina lithium or derivatives from lithium.
Excellent.
And the third main area in which we have been working is the high technologies in sensible areas. And then that's due to the question of nuclear energy, of outer space, satellites, and all those questions.
Right. So, Excellency, I want to now take you to the international scenario. We saw Donald Trump coming or becoming a president in America. We saw a lot of international development. There has been a question to the effectiveness of international bodies like United Nations, World Bank, WTO, and all. Since Argentina, India comes from pretty much similar background, they share a lot of common interests when it comes to the global bodies. And fortunately, Argentina and India both are the founding members of many of these international organizations, including, they are also collaborating in G20. What are the areas, Excellency, Argentina and India shares common interest and can work together to make the global bodies much more effective and transparent from here on?
I think that we can work in a very different number of areas. I wouldn't say this area or that one. I would say in the international scenario, we have a lot of work that has to be done and that we can work together. There are, in a lot of these organizations, for example, WTO, in which we have been working together, because all these trade wars have demonstrated that, in fact, there is a need to shape a little bit all these organizations. But I think that the main problem, it's not the shape, the reshape that needs to be done in the international organization, but it's the reality of the world that we are facing. And in that sense, you cannot make people fulfill what is in the norms. And a lot of times, when the laws are there, international law is there, international regulations are there, but people just don't comply with them. And you don't have any power to make them comply. You don't have any police power by the international organizations to enforce them. So as far as there is no mechanism for law enforcement, we will depend a lot in the political will of the different countries to fulfill the commitments that you take when you establish these kind of organizations. So there's a lot to be done in order to increase that political will and to work together. Of course, there are some other areas in which it's very important for us to work together. For example, terrorism. That has become an international menace, and you've seen what happened
in
just in Sri Lanka yesterday. It was something that it's very shameful. So that gives us back the idea that there are many different areas in which we still have a lot of common interests to develop with India and in which we can work together.
Right, Excellency. So, Excellency, now talking about the media, media plays a very crucial and important role, and Argentina has a very mature and established print media industry. But with the rise of internet, the very direction of media is slightly changing. I'm going to end the interview with the last question, but before putting the last question, I want to understand from you. You have also seen Indian media, the way Indian media is functioning, electronic, satellite, print, and all. Now, with the rise of internet, media will play or is playing a different role through social media and all. What role do you think Indian media is playing and can play to promote international cooperation between different countries?
Look, I think that India media plays a very important role. Here you're just talking about a question of age, generational question of different generations. The guys that have been brought up with internet, they only know internet. So media for them is internet. Right. They cannot imagine that there is a newspaper there, around there, that it's printed. And I think that people much more closer to my age, we are just trying to live between these two worlds, the world of the printing media and the world of the internet media. And my view is that both have a role to play and both are important.
Right.
One thing is sitting down carefully, trying to read and understand. It's a question of also developing the language. But it doesn't have, of course, the impact that the electronic media does have nowadays. Speed, the number of people you reach, because now it's not only internet through computers. You know, every guy that has a phone has immediate access to news and to what's going on in the world in seconds. So this is something that has changed a lot the international relations also. But that doesn't mean that there's not space for the written media, for the electronic one. You have to do a good balance between them, and both of them are useful for the developing of international relations. And in this, of course, diplomacy plays today a role very different than it used to play in the past, because we were basically, at a point in time, sources of information. Now we are not anymore sources of information. You cannot compete with CNN. No. Now what you have to compete is in the possibility of processing that information and applying it to the view of what you are as a diplomat of your country, and how does affect your country through the different impacts that might have at the international level. So this media and all of these have changed a lot, and have changed a lot of different roles. So you have to adapt those roles to the age you live.
True. Excellency, putting the last question and concluding the interview, there are three aspects I want to bring in again. Since we are journalists, we try to bring as many issues as possible. Number one, Argentina and India has huge potential. There's no doubt in that fact. There are two things. When I was working with FICCI and CII, the challenge that I faced was that communication, due to the difference of the time zone and the distance. These are two primary areas. Had Argentina been somewhere nearby, the amount of development and growth and partnership would have been much more than what we have today. Second, you are, as an excellency, as an ambassador, you are here for a couple of good time now. What are your priority areas to boost or further the relationship from here, given that these are the challenges we have, and seeing that India is rising as a power? How do you see India's role in the international arena? So putting three things actually together to conclude your remarks.
Well, I think that you need a book to answer to those three questions together, but I'll try to pick here and there. As I told you, the main issues that we are dealing with, for us, this is the main working plan that we have on a day-to-day basis. To this, you have to add one very important element, which is the cultural aspect. And when I mean culture, I mean a lot of different things. I mean food, I mean cinema, I mean sports, I mean dance, I mean, there are very many issues in which we are also working. And I mentioned the area of sports as one of an important one, because it's a very... Sports doesn't need a language. You just communicate through the language of sport, of that particular sport. So that's something where you don't need too many things to do, but just to have the political will of advancing. And that makes also the people know the other country, understand a little bit its culture. And from there on, when you really know about other country, you have the wish to interact more than you've been doing. In the case of India, we do appreciate very much what you're doing in yoga, Ayurveda, and a lot of the spiritual image that India gives through the work of their society. So that's another issue in which we are working, and we think that it's very important. what is the role of India? I think that India has a very important role to play. It's a very important economy in the region. It has proven that. It has a very important influence in all the area. It has have a very positive, pacific way of interacting with the region itself,
Right.
despite episodes that might have happened here or there. But it's not a conquering power. It's a power that it's imposing itself
Right.
through the own development of their society. So I think you have to play a role not only in the region but in other regions. So this is the future for India, and what I believe you have to concentrate is on how you might fulfill that role in other regions of the world.
Right. So thank you. So we had Excellency the Ambassador of Argentina, and as Ambassador highlighted, there are certain issues that Argentina, I mean, a very important power center of Latin America or South America, has a tremendous potential to boost India's relationship with India. And as Excellency highlighted, there are many areas India and Argentina are cooperating, including defense, agriculture, energy, mining, and high tech in sensitive areas. And Excellency also highlighted that if there is political will, then there are many other areas. They don't need language, they just need the political will, like cultural relations, food, sports. They don't need any different kind of push. They just need a simple political will to go ahead. And he also highlighted that at the international arena, Argentina and India can truly cooperate for betterment of the society for the world. Thank you so much. Keep watching. We will come back with another expert on different issue.